What glorious purpose we have today as we get to review this season 2 finale for Loki. And man, what a mind-blowing finale this one was. I got weirdly emotional throughout this entire episode. I had goosebumps. I just felt just such damn emotion watching this. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that the start of Loki season 2 wasn't primarily my favorite, but the first season of Loki I utterly loved in every way. And ever since episode 3, it really started to win me back and remind me very much, yeah, this is why Loki is one of the most unique and special things in the MCU. And while this episode easily could have tied more into the multiverse, could have brought more Kangs in, could have tied into Quantum Mania, could have tied into the future of the MCU in so many different ways, it didn't. It didn't need to. It has its little tidbits that we'll talk about, but in the end of the day, it resulted and revolved back around in a giant circle of what Loki has been about. And it's overall been a character study for the character of Loki. And while he's gotten such huge development, which I said last week, Loki is honestly the second or first, you could honestly argue right there. I think Rocket Raccoon's still my favorite, most developed character in the entire MCU. But Loki is one of those up there as well, top 3. And a lot of that goes down to the show, what they were able to develop, but it's also a lot of what Tom Hiddleston's done. So I'm very excited to talk about this. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button because we do like talking movies and TV over here on a daily basis. I am doing an MCU movie ranking, including the Marvels, which just came out. I do have a review for that already up. And, well, without further ado, let's dive into this because a lot happened in this episode. At the end of the last episode, that he figured out how to control the time slipping, and he time slipped back to before Victor Timely died. And very much the start of this episode was him going back and trying to figure out, okay, if he runs faster, okay, if I scoot back more, okay, what if I go all the way back and figure out how to make this device so we can just go and fix the loom right away? That's where it ends up becoming. And him learning this and spending centuries doing this. In a way, Loki is no longer the god of mischief. In the middle of this episode, he pretty much becomes the god of time. I think that changes, though, towards the end of this. And I love how they did that. And when you get that joyfulness that Victor Timely makes it, and it still does not work. You get that same self-devastating feeling that I had at the very end of episode 4, when Victor Timely died. Went up in spaghetti. And I had that same feeling when the device failed then, because it's, what now? And it's basically Loki slipping back and goes all the way back to He Who Remains. That day when Sylvie killed him. And first off, I know, like, Jonathan Majors isn't in the best waters. I don't know where the court case is going. I'm not into celebrity tabloids and stuff like that. I'm just into the show. He's fantastic as He Who Remains. I loved him in season 1. And very much as Loki is trying to protect and save his life, it's a very fun sequence. Him just trying to convince Sylvie to settle down, and then Victor Timely, He Who Remains, just goes whoop, pauses it, gets rid of her, and they have a conversation. Which again has this whole revolving circle of what I loved about the first season is how the last episode, instead of being this big gangbuster action scene, it was just them having a talk and understanding more of the multiverse. And while a lot of people thought it was exposition heavy, and some people might complain about the same thing here, I found it to be one of the most thought-provoking things in the MCU and one of the most thought-provoking things in the comic book realm. And TV and movies, it doesn't matter. And that conversation about time slipping, how he can pause, how he can do all these different things, tries to make these decisions, and where very much He Who Remains gives him a choice. You let her kill me, everyone dies. But the sacred timeline, this loom, is a failsafe. Which just puts a whole perspective of Loki basically has to kill someone that he loves, or let He Who Remains live. And it's a tough decision because then he flips back and goes back to the first time Mobius and him had a conversation. And I almost cried there. I almost cried. But that's what got me emotional, and then I got very teary-eyed throughout the rest of the episode, and him having that conversation with Mobius, like, just skips right ahead and tells Mobius what's going to happen. He's asking him, how do you prune? And the story that Owen Wilson starts telling in this about how he couldn't make the decision, and Renslayer made it. And how now you get a little bit of added background and context to both of their stories. That for me, and again, shout out to Owen Wilson. I think he is incredible in this. That scene alone, and then the scene when he's watching himself as the variant Dawn and his two kids playing. Emotional, depth, just the look on his face. Owen Wilson, phenomenal actor. And again, just to shout out everyone, Sophie Di Martino is incredible. Sylvie, Gugu Mimbath, Ra is incredible as Ravonna Renslayer. I've just loved all this, and it's been phenomenal to see that. But then Loki time slips all the way back to when everyone started disappearing, when he got all the variants together, and stops time and has a conversation with Sylvie again. And basically tells Sylvie because he's just wanting someone to tell him. He wants her permission to kill her. And she's like, I'm not giving you that permission. You need to make this choice. And, it's tough for him because he's having this. He wanted that permission, didn't get it. He goes to Mobius, who Mobius basically says sometimes you got to look at the overall picture. And a conversation that goes back to last week about being selfish, what Loki realizes that he can do now is save everyone's free will in that loom moment. And in a way, Loki becomes the god of free will, which is just a whole character arc in itself that could very much get you emotionally attached. And I can't believe I'm almost crying over this. This is the fucking stupidest thing I could possibly ever do, but I love it, and I love how he just rushes down there, says his goodbyes, goes out there, and just, first off, gets one of the most iconic, comic book costumes of Loki. I just loved that outfit. I love the horns. I love all that. And he just starts strutting through, and he destroys the loom, but then grabs all the branches that are dying and heals them and brings them into his own, and walks off and gets his throne that he's always wanted. And this is a throne that is for He Who Remains. Which in a way now, Loki is the brand new He Who Remains. And while there are Kang variants still out there that have not discovered the TVA and do not know about the TVA yet, and I know there's been rumors that maybe they'll get rid of Kang and switch it off to a different villain in the MCU. I don't think that's the right choice, but in that moment, Loki sitting down, claiming his throne, just felt satisfying because it's all for the right purpose. Glorious purpose, may I say. And it fits after you see B-15's very much taking in charge, is in charge of the TVA, sending everyone to the war room, walks past Mobius and has a conversation with him where he hands her a folder, has a nice little Easter egg there mentioning about 616 and how there was a Victor Timely or a He Who Remains variant that gave him a little bit of trouble, but they handled it, which I'm assuming that's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania that they talked about. And then he has his own folder, and he goes and has a conversation where I need to see this through. And it clicks over, and before going to him, you see Renslayer in this purged out world, which I'm very interested to see where that goes. I'm assuming we'll get a Loki season 3, and that whole organization in the purged world with her in it. It's very fascinating, but it goes then Sylvie walking up and having a conversation with Mobius. And while they're having that conversation, you get this emotional lump in your throat. And it pans out, and you see Loki is through all the strands watching his friends live their lives with free will. And with a smile on his face, he's joyful and happy for what he's doing. And where He Who Remains was doing it for the most selfish purposes, Loki's doing it for the right. And while, yes, he is selfish into what he decided to do, he wanted to be with his friends, he didn't want to end up being alone. In reality, he's not. He's happy. And I think there's an emotional part to that all, that eventually him and Thor will reunite. But it's the fact that he gets to see everyone that he cares about in different timelines, in different branches, and specifically the friends he made along the way. And I just find that to be absolutely touching, heart-breaking in some ways, but also just emotional. And I thought this episode, this season 2 finale, was just mind-blowing and incredible and perfect. There's no other way that I would have changed it. I love that they really took a deeper dive into Loki and could have made it into so many more things, and it's never been about that. It's always been about the development of the multiverse, and specifically the development of Loki as a character. And as a show that I've never been excited for when it was first announced, I thought it was the stupidest idea. I am so happy that we have this piece of media, and specifically this piece of art that's now inside the MCU. So I definitely can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts. I think there's a lot of theories running around of what they're going to do, what this ending means, what season 3 could possibly bring if we need that, or if eventually this just ties into Secret Wars. There's so many different possibilities that they could have, and I think with projects like this, it gives me hope that the MCU can find its great footing again. And now with everything being delayed, Deadpool 3 being the only big movie we have next year, and then the year after that we get Captain America, Thunderbolts, and Blade. I think those are excellent ideas that now we kind of get to settle in, and maybe hopefully the Marvel Studios can figure out what they're going and what they were doing wrong. So with that said, guys, make sure to leave your thoughts down below. And with season 2 of Loki now over, I can rate the whole thing, and I'm going to give the overall season a 9 out of 10. Besides episode 2 being the one thing that just didn't really work for me, I think episode 1 actually increases. All my issues I had with that kind of disappeared after seeing the entire season. And I can't wait to see your guys' thoughts down below. Look forward to the MCU movie ranking later this week, and I will be doing an updated MCU show TV ranking after What If season 2 premieres in December. So look forward to that, and of course, until next time, stay classy.